Final Fantasy VII Remake has once again blown us away with its latest TGS 2019 trailer. I have to say, I was completely floored by everything I saw. I was impressed in a way I hadn't been with any game in years. If you've seen my reaction video, you know that's pretty genuine. This all being said, Final Fantasy VII Remake's latest trailer is absolutely loaded with details. For a 2-minute and 40-second trailer, it's completely packed with secrets, surprises, and many answers to long-awaited questions. So without any further delay, let's get into it. At the start of the trailer, we see Cloud walking out of a building. Power lines, mega pipes, and the plate above are visible. More importantly, however, we notice the Watchmen of Fate. These mysterious ghost-like entities who've been shown off in other trailers are seemingly terrorizing Avalanche. Wow, that's a pretty ironic sentence. Despite trying to fight them off, it seems their attacks do minimal damage to them. Cloud and Tifa are seen running toward the building, which appears to be Seventh Heaven, that is, Tifa's bar. And hey, we now know her bar serves eggs and chips. The scene then cuts to Jessie's face directly, and boy does she look great, with her and Cloud riding together, on a motorcycle of course, which most notably is not the Hardy Daytona. Biggs and Wedge are also on another identical bicycle, with Wedge being the only one wearing his goggles like a nerd. This scene is most likely the one that we've seen at E3 2019, which depicts the gameplay portion of this scene. We then see a very short clip of an explosion happening. Meanwhile, another bike appears overhead, with Jesse asking, "Who's that?" He crashes onto the scene, and you can spot this Shinra logo on the corner of his bicycle. Moving forward the next few frames, we get a good look at this man who is identified by Cloud as a member of Soldier. Here we can see his full body and hair. His overall costume is similar to the ones that we've seen soldiers wear in the past, with the rather iconic shoulder pauldrons, like the one we've seen characters like Zack wear. You also might notice he has a very familiar sword. It's the exact same design as the one seen in Crisis Core that Zack has at the start of the game. This sword seems to commonly be used by those in Soldier, with the emblem on the sword being the same emblem featured on the belts of all the members of Soldier. The next scene we're shown is Cloud sitting on a bed, with Tifa standing across the room. She says, "I can't say this is what I had in mind when I asked you to help me way back when." This seems to be a direct reference to the promise Cloud and Tifa made to each other when they were younger, where Cloud would come and save her whenever she was in a bind. However, this is not how the scene plays out in the original game at all, which in the original game it has them talking in the middle of the bar. Which, come to think of it, a deep private conversation like that, it does make sense to change the timing and location to a scene that's somewhere more private and intimate. The remake seems to do a lot of things actually that changes old scenes to structure them to be a bit more practical, which is something that I really enjoy about it. The next scene is yet another one of Cloud tripping out and seeing Sephiroth, reaching for his Buster Sword. It's hard to tell the exact location, but judging by the wall here, it looks to be the same room that Cloud and Tifa were talking in. If these scenes are in the same room, it could potentially mean that Cloud trips out and sees Tifa as Sephiroth. When he tries to strike, however, you'll notice that his Buster Sword gets caught on the edge of the ceiling. It bounces off and prevents him from striking, which is probably for the better. Then we see a scene of Biggs, Jesse, and Cloud parachuting into Midgar, which is a brand new scene added into the remake. While parachuting into Midgar definitely does happen in the original game, it doesn't happen nearly this early or with this particular set of characters. Judging from how this scene looks, this appears to be a pre-rendered FMV. Biggs then says, "He's a keeper alright." This is a clear response to what Jesse was saying in an earlier trailer when she asked him if Cloud was a keeper. This and other dialogue shows Jesse's willingness to have an inappropriate work relationship with Cloud, but hey man, once you're a terrorist, is anything really that inappropriate anymore? Panning out, we then see a second parachute with two other people, who I assume to be Wedge and Barrett. Overall, I believe this takes place shortly after the bombing mission. The next scene is Cloud and Aerith in the church, where they meet for the second time after Cloud runs into her on the streets, though this meeting is much more of a formal introduction. Of course, just when the two are getting real cheeky with each other, someone just has to barge in. And of course that person would be Reno, just like he does in the original game. Except now Reno can somehow teleport behind people, kinda looks straight out of Final Fantasy 15. Though I suppose this is more likely to demonstrate just how fast he is. However, what does differ strongly from the original game is that Reno and Cloud end up fighting each other in the middle of the church. And Reno is fast, dodging and flipping around many of Cloud's sword swings. Not only is Reno fast, but he's also incredibly strong, with one of his finishing moves hitting Cloud for 600 damage, which which is 1/3 of his HP. Next up we see Rude, and yet another scene that almost certainly didn't happen in the original game. He looks at Cloud and says, "those eyes," which refers to Cloud's Mako-infused eyes. Just like Reno, Rude is also incredibly tough in combat. When Cloud attacks, Rude is able to block or resist most of his attacks. But the best part of this fight by far is that Rude reveals just how much of a Super Mario 64 fan he is by swinging Cloud around like Bowser. Oh my god, he is holding onto that Buster Sword for dear life. But the best part by far is that he literally hits Aerith with Cloud, knocking them both over, almost making them look like amateurs. I guess they kinda are though. Moving forward, we see Aerith in Wall Market and the Don Corneo events, but the real detail in here is Cloud. When Cloud looks at Aerith, you can see that his pupils literally dilate, and his jaw drops. This subtle and impressive facial animation in itself tells a story. You feel that when he's looking at her, he's genuinely in awe. It's a physiological response for your pupils to dilate when you see someone you're attracted to. Cloud would never, ever say to her, "you look beautiful." So this subtle animation for Cloud, which details his body language, will also contradict his words, and through that create a lot of depth in his character. In its own right, it pushes the boundaries of video game storytelling, because now even minute body language can tell a story. Speaking of pushing boundaries, Don Corneo is back, and in the English version, he's voiced by Mark Hamill. And boy, the Don looks sleazier than ever. Just makes your skin crawl. But it's the next scene that I feel personally vindicated. It seems as though the love triangle is most likely back, and boy is it grander than ever. Considering that Aerith is talking to Cloud about the Don's specific tastes, and then her convincing him that it will be fine, it sounds a lot like this is where she's convincing Cloud to become Miss Cloud. The only strange thing is that Tifa is there. I have a very strong hunch that Tifa will be present during the Wall Market scenes now. We then see a quick scene of Aerith watching Marlene, moments before the collapse of the Sector 7 plate. Unfortunately, she's kidnapped by Sung, who appears here through the doorway, noting that she's led them through a merry chase. While this happens in the original game, we never actually see the kidnapping, they just kinda show up with her in a helicopter. All the meanwhile, this is happening while our heroes are fighting their way up the winding stairs. We're then treated to yet another look at the Watchmen of Fate, but this time during gameplay. They seem to be blinding when how fast they swirl around in the air. While the camera angle suggests that the player is controlling Cloud, there's no UI present, and his walking speed has been slowed down to be more cinematic, so this is definitely not meant to be a combat segment, further suggesting that you might not be able to fight the Watchmen of Fate, at least not in a traditional sense. Or perhaps they don't know yet how to fight them. From here we're shown a barrage of different things. Next we see Cloud and Aerith sneaking along a rooftop of the church. Almost reminds me of something out of Uncharted. We're shown the security checkpoints and how they managed to make the fateful red flashing animation in the original come to life while also demonstrating that it's also a scanning device. Final Fantasy VII is also a game that featured a lot of just climbing things. Climbing ladders, climbing poles, just climbing stuff. Climbing stuff is back in Final Fantasy VII Remake, and interestingly enough, we get a look at Tifa climbing. This doesn't seem to be during combat, so quite possibly we can switch between characters outside of combat. Darts, which is a brand new minigame, can now be played in 7th Heaven. Squats are back, which is amazing. And they also added pull-ups, which are a brand new minigame. They seem to play out similar to squats. They work the same way, but the series of button presses are different. Also, oh my god, Tifa is literally training next to Chad right here. In the next scene we see Barrett literally blowing through some rubble. The command prompt says press square to search, with the pile of rubble also having the square button over it. It would seem that someone or something is missing or blocked off, and they have to clear through debris to get to it. Toad status is back, but this time it even turns Cloud's Buster Sword into a mini one. This is just awesome, and notably your triangle attack becomes Bubble Blast. Another new change is that instead of showing up in person, President Shinra and Heidegger appear as holograms to Avalanche, just moments before the fight with Airbuster. This makes sense as there's no reason for President Shinra to show up in person. I mean, Barrett could have literally used his arm and rolled the credits right there, so I guess that makes sense. What's interesting and brand new for this remake is that they also accuse Avalanche of being associated with Wutai. I absolutely love this change, because this is the exact type of political distraction distraction you'd see happening in real life, deflecting an issue onto another group of people, blaming a foreign country, associating non-related problems with a non-related group of people. This also is going to affect Yuffie's interpretation of the cast, which I look forward to seeing. We also got our first look at the boss of the elevator in the Shinra building, which he actually looks pretty intimidating now. I wonder if that'll still take place on an elevator though, considering the game's more realistic push. And in an action game, fighting on an elevator, I genuinely wonder how they'll pull that off. But more importantly, we got our first look at summons. And in a very interesting change, summons appear to fight alongside of you, similar to the way they did in Final Fantasy XIII. They appear to be on a timer. I'm curious if enemy damage can also hasten this timer. Before the summon disappears, it seems they perform a very big special finishing attack. The trailer then cuts back to Reno and Cloud fighting atop the Sector 7 pillar, with Reno hopping out of the helicopter in what is one of the most obvious Final Fantasy 15 references since, well, I guess Viram Rex. This scene is almost one for one with the scene in Final Fantasy 15 where Aranea and Noctis fight, even down to the fact that it takes place at night, the camera angles. It's all just a very nice Easter egg. Then they cut back to summons, where we get a quick glimpse at what appears to be Odin, circling around the party of Tifa, Cloud, and Aerith. They also appear to be fighting him. Is it possible you have to fight summons to obtain them in Final Fantasy VII Remake? Shiva then appears in the scene, but despite her being summoned, all the characters in P-bars are still full, and all the party members are still present rather than 2 being removed. So where exactly did Shiva come from? It remains unclear at the moment, but Diamond Dust looks fantastic. The last 2 scenes, we see Tifa reaching out for Cloud as the staircase crumbles. The pillar is going down. After the logo appears and fades away, we then get a look at the Sector 7 plate, destroyed, which is absolutely heartbreaking. It seems my prediction about it being the most devastating scene in Final Fantasy VII Remake was not far off after all. So Ultima Weapons, in what is one of the longest videos I've made in quite some time, what do you think? Did you spot any details I might have missed while analyzing this trailer? Subscribe, click the bell icon, and let me know in the comments below. And if you've been enjoying my content, be sure to check out the Patreon for the Night Sky Prince, where incredible people like Chris Lee are helping support the channel. I'm going to be making a ton of Final Fantasy VII Remake videos, especially this month with all the TGS stuff coming out. So if you want to more directly support the channel, please be sure to check the link in the description below. Shout out to Chris and the rest of the Ultima community.